I would like to introduce our speaker for tonight, my friend Craig Schwartz. Craig Schwartz is a retired business director from 3M and has studied Ayn Rand's philosophy for over 25 years. And he's also an active member of the Minnesota Objectivist Association. He has had many experiences in creating jobs and competing in high technology industries in the worldwide marketplace. He has given 2 other talks to the Tea Party before. One is on morality of capitalism, which he gave to the statewide coalition of Tea Partiers. And then the other is the philosophic basis of freedom, which was right here at SWMetroTeaParty earlier in June this year. He's also known as Craig the Sign Guy and posts a weekly sign since Obamacare was passed. And he also publishes a weekly email list. If you're interested in being in his email list, please talk to him after the talk, and you can give him your email ID. He's now on sign number 127, and I'll just pull that up for you once I go back to my computer. Thank you, and please welcome Craig Schwartz.
Thanks, Pooja. Yeah, so Pooja mentioned I was on sign number 127. And actually, if you want to get on my sign list, this goes out, I think, to about 350 people. And I know just about everybody forwards it. It probably goes to 5,000 people. My current sign, is Pooja pulling it up? After this week in the Middle East, it says, Mr. President, your job, defend U.S. lives and values, you failed. That's the sign this week. And the email I send out, it's usually about a 3 or 4 paragraph description about why I put that sign up and the background behind it. And I have some examples if you want to look at it. So if you want to be on the sign list, sign that email. So Pooja talked about the ominous parallels, the book, The Ominous Parallels. And I just want to reinforce what she said. I have personally read that book 3 times now. I just read it again last year. And there's very, very few books I ever read 3 times. But the key about it is his premise, and he wrote this at his PhD thesis, and then later he wrote a book about it. The key was, how did Nazi Germany ever happen? How could that ever happen in a society? And kind of, the key premise behind Hitler was, we don't have to nationalize property. We're just going to control it. Let people privately own it, and we'll control it through taxes, through regulation, and through force. And if you look at the definition of fascism, fascism is government-controlled private property. So all these comments of wherever that group was that at the Democratic Convention, or where was that? And they don't understand what socialism is. So socialism is nationalized means of production. It's what we did to GM. GM is a socialist move. More appropriately, where the United States has been going for a long time is really a fascist economic. It's not, a racist version like, Nazi Germany, but it's an economic policy of fascism, which is government-controlled private property. So it's a really excellent book. And actually, I will comment about the book he's writing now and about where we're headed, because it's really frightening. So my topic tonight is why the government cannot create jobs. And as a matter of fact, why government destroys jobs. So at the end of this, what I'd like to do is maybe for 10 minutes or so, make some comments about the 2012 election and the philosophic background of both candidates, but especially about the philosophic background behind Obama and where it comes from and what's implied in it, because it is really frightening. So let me start with the why government can't create jobs. And this is a very important issue in the election. So it's about the economy, it's about jobs. In the last week, it's a lot of attention on foreign policy and what's going on in the Middle East. We currently have an 8.1% unemployment rate, which was reported in August. So we have 43 months of greater than 8% unemployment. So there's 12.5 million people unemployed. Now, if anybody paid attention, the number actually went down. It went down from 8.3 to 8.1. And the reason it went down is for every person that was hired, 4 people stopped looking for work. So the pool of who they're measuring is going down. The real rate of unemployment, so the unemployment plus the underemployed, the people that are working part-time and want to work full-time, which is called the U6 rate, it's at 14.7%, so almost 15% unemployment, or 27.3 million people are unemployed or underemployed. The number of people in the workforce is at the lowest level in 32 years. So the number of people in the workforce is now at 63%, the lowest in 32 years. Now, both parties claim that they can create jobs. So here's the Democratic claims. And during the Democratic National Convention, both Clinton and Obama mentioned this. We created 4.5 million jobs in the last 29 months. So first off, they didn't create it. The government didn't create it. There were 4.5 million jobs created by private industry. And if you look into fact check on that number, what they've done is took the very lowest number, the down cycle, which occurred after Obama came in. And so if you look at from when President Obama came into term, he's created 400,000 jobs, or claims that there's 400,000, not 4.5 million. And then during his speech, he says, if we reward United States companies to put factories in the United States, we can create 1 million jobs in 4 years. We can create 600,000 jobs in the natural gas industry. So the natural gas industry will create those jobs whether Obama does anything except regulate them out of existence. We will hire 100,000 science and math teachers. And I don't know if you followed this, and it was during Clinton's speech and then later in Obama's speech, and it's like the biggest lie I've ever heard told, and it's like a grand equivocation. And what was implied is if we return to the tax rates of Bill Clinton, so tax the rich, and when Bill Clinton came in, there was just severe tax increases all over the place. And during his term, 23 million jobs were created under President Clinton. And what's implied is, well, if we raise taxes on the rich, we'll create jobs. And it is an absolute lie. And, the background behind that is when Clinton came in, he did raise taxes. But then, later, he lowered taxes. And he had a lot of great stuff going for him during that economic cycle. And if they hadn't done the things with taxes, there would have been more jobs created. You cannot compare these two periods of time. So the Republicans also claimed, in a little bit more positive tone, I thought, so Romney's speech, he promised to unleash the economy, to create 12 million new jobs. And he went through his 5-point plan of energy, education, free trade, cut the deficit, and lower taxes and regulations on small business. Now, on Sunday morning, and I just happened to catch this, Jim Graves, who's running against Michelle Bachmann, he claimed on Sunday morning television that he could create jobs by bringing back money from Washington, D.C. for small business to invest in the 6th District. So that's his concept of job creation, is to take money from the federal government and invest in District 6. So you have to ask, well, where did this crazy idea that government create jobs, where did it come from? And You know, people have been making these claims for over 100 years. But actually, job creation is in the law. So when the Federal Reserve was created in 1913, they had a dual mandate, and the dual mandate was price stability and full employment. So if you take a look, last week they did QE3, quantitative easing 3, printing of money 3. And the reason given was high unemployment rates. And what's interesting about this QE is there's no end to it. It's between printing of money and what they're going to do with bonds as Operation Twist. There's $85 billion per month that's going to be pumped into the economy with no end. So you could even call it quantitative infinity. So that's one part of where it was put into law, but our good friend Hubert Humphrey in Minnesota, in the Humphrey-Hawkins Full Employment Act of 1978, was stated a goal of less than 3% unemployment and less than 4% inflation by 1983. And written into the law was if private industry fails to meet these goals, then government is allowed to create a reservoir of public employees. So this myth is all over the place. It's, you know, written into the mandate of the Federal Reserve and other laws. And it's like a badge of honor used by the government and an excuse to do government spending, to grow government, to invest in the stimulus, to grow deficits and debts, and really grow political power. And it's absolutely not true. So what is the truth? What kind of economy do we really have? So we have a mixed economy of statism and freedom. Only the free part can create wealth and jobs. The statist part, the government part, is only force and can only destroy wealth and jobs. So this theory of the mixed economy, what it is that you can get the good part of capitalism, you know, growth and you know, a robust economy, and none of the bad. So by the government managing the economy, you won't get any of the bad. They will make sure we never have recessions and depressions and anything bad will ever happen. So that's the theory of the mixed economy, and it's been endorsed by every single president since Roosevelt. So there's a guy by the name of Andrew Schonfield that wrote a book that's called In Defense of the Mixed Economy. And in that book, he states, the government and their agencies may intervene either to accelerate a market process or to delay it, or to bias the market in a certain direction by means of subsidies, taxes, or direct regulations. That is what the mixed economy is. That's what we have in the United States and in many other economies in the world. So these are the tools of government force. Taxes and regulations are like a double-barrel shotgun of the government. Now, I was just appalled and disgusted of what President Obama said during his speech. He made fun of the Republicans, and all they want to do is take another tax cut. And he had that line in there about, you have a cold, take 2 tax cuts, and roll back regulations and call me in the morning. And it's just appalling what was said. Also, I heard a lot of comments about Amy Klobuchar. And I wanted to share with you that about 2 years ago, Amy Klobuchar came around to the corporations in the Twin Cities. And the reason I know that is I gave input into this. And the question was asked to corporations in the Twin Cities, can you give me input about how to help grow the economy? Except I don't want any input on 2 things, taxes and regulations, because those are the tools of force and that's how the economy is controlled. I don't know what kind of input we gave after that. So the real key that the only way government can create jobs is by stop destroying them. So if you take a look at all the measurements, it's from 1 month to the next, or 1 quarter to the next, or 1 year to the next. And if things improve, the government claims that they created the jobs. And what is true is that the free market created those jobs, and the government took credit for it. Only private individuals and free markets can create jobs. So last month at the Heritage Foundation, they had an event in the Twin Cities, and Art Laffer, who is, he's like one of the gurus of supply side economics, he came around and introduced himself to everybody. And when I was talking to him briefly, I said, I'm writing an article about why government can't create jobs and thinking about giving a speech. Can you give me just one nugget that I could use? He says, well, it's very simple. He says, the government must take money out of the economy before they can put any money into the economy. It's that simple. So the government doesn't have any money. The only money the government has is what it takes from tax revenue and other revenue sources through taxes from private and corporations. And so his point, the government must take money out of the economy before they can put any money into the economy, is absolutely right. It's ludicrous to think that they can take money out of the economy, waste a portion on their own headcount and inefficiency, and invest money more wisely than the free market. So here's an analogy. It's like taking water out of a swimming pool and you're trying to raise the level of the swimming pool. So what you do is you take it out of the deep end and you carry it over and you dump it into the shallow end. Except you're the government doing this, so every time you move that bucket, you spill half of the water that's in it. You will never, ever raise the level of the swimming pool. But that doesn't stop the government from trying. So here's some of their gems. So the U.S. Housing Incentive Program. So this, this was over 10 or 20 year period of time, and the Republicans and Democrats, they're all to blame for this. And it ended in a major financial crisis. In 2011, Freddie and Fannie still are losing $22 billion of taxpayer money. So the stimulus spending of $800 billion, and I'll talk a little bit later about that number, and a promise that unemployment rates would be 5.5% by mid-2012. Our unemployment rate is 8.1%, and it's actually higher than the rates promised if we didn't do the stimulus program, which was 6%. So we had the Cash for Clunker program. $3 billion was spent, or an average of $24,000 per car, on the Cash for Clunker program. The government didn't create any new demand. They just pulled demand forward. For those in the market for used cars now, I think the average price of a used car is now up about $2,000. So then we had a whole series of Department of Energy stimulus programs by Dr. Chu. So Cylinder went bankrupt, the taxpayers are out $527 billion. Solar Trust of America went bankrupt. We lost $2.1 billion in loans from the DOE. Enter1, which actually was a customer they had worked with before, a lithium-ion battery company, lost $118 million. In addition, Beacon Power, Abound Solar, Amonex Solar, SpectraWatt all went bankrupt. So the highlight they point to is General Motors. So the Volt, which is General Motors' electric vehicle, it's subsidized by the government at $7,500 per vehicle, and the estimated loss is General Motors loses $49,000 per vehicle. That's $49,000 per vehicle is the lost per vehicle. So I think the production cost is something like $80,000, I think is fully burdened production cost. So those are some examples of the government playing around in the free market and trying to manipulate the economy to create jobs and create wealth. So not only can they not create jobs, I want to give you two examples of how they destroy wealth in the private industry so private industry can't create jobs. So first off, we are spending $3.8 trillion every year is the federal government spend, 40% of which is borrowed. Our debt now is $16 trillion. Our unfunded liability is at $100 trillion. And if you look at these numbers, they're like numbing. You can't conceptualize what these numbers are. They're almost unimaginable. So let me give you a way to conceptualize what those numbers are. So anybody that's owned a business or worked for a major corporation or managed a P&L, you know how hard it is to create $1 million of profit each and every year, or $10 million, or $100 million of profit. It is damn hard. So if you take all of the profits of the Fortune 500 companies, so the top 500 companies in the United States, for 2011, it's $824 billion. All the profit after they've paid taxes. We are spending 4.5 times the total profit of the Fortune 500 companies. That's what the government is spending, if you want a way to conceptualize how much money it is. So if you look at the stimulus program of $800 billion, we spent all of the profits of the likes of ExxonMobil, Walmart, Chevron, Conoco, GM, General Electric, Berkshire Hathaway, Ford, HP, and 490 other companies. All of the profit went into the stimulus program with not one result. And it didn't move the needle at all on unemployment. As a matter of fact, it moved it the wrong direction. It's absolutely outrageous, the amount of money that's being spent. So that's one way to kind of conceptualize how much wealth is being taken out of the economy. Just imagine if the economy had that $800 billion to spend on capital and manufacturing plants and hiring salespeople and hiring scientists, how much more wealth would have been created than the government throwing this money away. So another way to conceptualize how dramatically wrong it is, look at the head count of the government. So the head count of the federal government is 4.3 million employees. If you include state and local government, total government head count is $19.3 million. So now, and there's all sorts of numbers reported about, what's the salaries and benefits of private industry. So I actually think the best average, I think it was published by the Reason Foundation, is they earn 35% higher wage and benefits. So if you factor that in at a 27% average state and federal taxation rate, one government employee takes 5 taxpayers to support. 5 taxpayers, their total income tax to support one government employee. Or if you take that 19.5 million, multiply by 5, the head count of the government, just the head count, takes 97 million taxpayers to support just the head count. That's before they spend $1 on any kind of a program. Just the head count of the government. Something is massively wrong. So 97 million taxpayers to support. Total taxpayers are 116 million people that paid taxes. So the government, just the head count, is consuming the total tax revenue of the United States of America. And so if you want to work on programs, what do? Well, we're going to have to borrow it from Chinese. It's just those two things. If you really think about it, something is dramatically wrong, drastically wrong with the government. So let me turn to the free market side and how the free market creates jobs. And let me give you a really heroic example. When I worked at 3M, I worked in the material side and chemical side, selling materials into the semiconductor electronic companies. And I had the honor of attending the 40th anniversary of Moore's Law. And anybody that works in computers, Moore's Law is the number of transistors per area, and that it'll double every year. And Gordon Moore, who it was named after, talked about the invention of the semiconductor industry, because he was there when it started. The significance of Moore's Law is that every 2 years, quality goes up, speed goes up, and cost goes down. It's a really unique industry. There's no other industry that works like that. So the beginning of the semiconductor industry started with 8 individuals. They were working at a company by the name of Shockley, I think Shockley Semiconductor. They were hired by Fairchild Semiconductor, where semiconductors were developed and commercialized. And that group of 8 individuals are the ones that did it. And Gordon Moore told, the story of how it was done. Later, these key individuals, those 8 individuals, so 7 of them eventually left Fairchild Semiconductor. And they founded companies on their own. They founded Intel. They have founded AMD. And they founded 65 other semiconductor and electronic companies. That is how wealth is created. That is the spirit of America. That's how it's done. And it wasn't done by the government. So if you dig into any industry, you dig into the history of how it started, you will find 1 individual, 3 people, an example like this, 8 individuals. That's how industries are started. That's how progress is made. That's how wealth is created. If you look at what Thomas Edison did, he essentially created the wealth of General Electric. And Thomas Edison, I think, had about 1,100 patents, him and his laboratory, that were created. So wealth and jobs are created only by individuals, and that's the spirit of America that's under attack. And that's why private individuals, small companies, and even large companies reacted when Obama said, "You didn't build that." People were really angry. And I want to make some comments later when I talk about the philosophy of where this comes from. That is the essence of the philosophy right there. You didn't build that. So let me go on then and conclude this part. So what should be the proper relationship between government and individuals? And for this, I want to quote Ayn Rand, and this is from an article she wrote about the nature of government. I think it's in Capitalist, The Unknown Ideal. So what she said, quote, "Under a proper social system, a private individual is legally free to take any action he pleases, so long as he does not violate the rights of others. Why a government official is bound by law in every official act. A private individual may do anything except which is legally forbidden. A government official may do nothing except which is legally permitted. This is the means of subordinating might to right. This is the American concept of a government of laws and not of men." So we are rapidly moving away from those principles. As a matter of fact, those principles have been flipped on their heads. Almost all individual actions, you want to go create a job, go see the government. You want to build a house, you want to debate, and I had this debate about where my light switches were going to go and how many outlets I had to have, go see the government in an addition I built. So just about everything has to be approved by the government. Yet government administrators, our Congress passes umbrella laws, and the administrators are what fill in the details. The filling in of the details is the essence of making a lot of laws. They have almost become our fourth branch of government. It's like a lot of the actions, the aggressive actions EPA has done on greenhouse gases. So the proper moral system for economic growth and job growth is capitalism, and it's only capitalism. In a proper free society, there is complete separation of state and economics, just like we separate state and religion. It's the same principle. And we are rapidly moving in the wrong direction. So let me make some comments about the 2012 election and comments on both candidates and their underlying philosophies. So I listened to both the Republican and Democratic National Conventions. And when I was listening to the Democratic National Convention, I remembered that Ayn Rand had written comments about a previous Democratic National Convention, and I pulled this out, and I think her comments are even more pertinent today. Here's what she said, I think in 1972. Quote, "Like many men of the New Deal generation, the old leaders of the welfare status, such as Humphrey and Muskie," if you remember those two names, "did not consciously want to destroy the capitalist system. They merely wanted to keep on modifying it indefinitely without expecting any adverse consequence. As pragmatists, they scrambled for one single concept reform of the moment and then for another, in the tacit hope that the rest of the economy would remain unchanged. But it did not." Then she goes on and says, "A mixed economy has to reach the day when it faces a final crossroad. Either the private sector regains its freedom and starts rebuilding, or it gives up and lets the absolute state take over in the shambles." And I personally believe that is the crossroad that we are at in this 2012 election. And I think the direction of America will be changed for a long time, and if President Obama is reelected, I think it'll be changed forever, and maybe not regained. So let me comment about my opinions of the philosophy behind both of these presidents, and mostly I'll comment about President Obama. So all presidents from Roosevelt to Bush have believed in the mixed economy. You know, they've all endorsed it. If you look at spending, no matter Democrat or Republican, spending went up every single year, just about every single year. And this belief that governments can manage the economy and can create wealth and jobs. Mitt Romney is no different. After I read his book about a year ago, his book, No Apologies, Believe in America. And I remember my conclusion after reading that book is that, well, he's another mixed economy guy. But I think he gets where wealth is really created. He understands that wealth is really created by the free market and by individuals. But still, he's a mixed economy guy that maybe we have a little bit smaller government, maybe it's a little bit more efficient, but things aren't going to dramatically change. So let me make comments about President Obama. And the nature of these comments come from is really crystallized by two sources. One is by the book that Pooja mentioned, which I just finished reading. It was published 1 week ago. It's called The Dim Hypothesis, Why the Lights of the West Are Going Out by Leonard Peikoff. Also by a book about philosophy published by a guy by the name of John Rawls, and it's called A Theory of Justice, published in 1971 out of Harvard. So those are kind of the two sources of this opinion. So President Obama is a president like we've never seen before. He's a completely new direction, like nothing we've ever seen before. And I think a lot of people sense that, but they can't describe what it is. So many people mistake President Obama as a socialist. He is not a socialist. Even though if he needs to use it as a tactic, he'll use it as a tactic, like the acquisition of General Motors. So there is a little sprinkling of socialism in there, but that's not the core. That's not the root of who he is. So his views are best characterized as egalitarianism. So it's a view that equality is the fundamental moral value and the standard of good and evil. And it's not equality of opportunity, kind of the view of our founding fathers. It's not even the equality of the welfare status. They push, well, everybody's got to have kind of a fair chance, that we got to give them good education. So everybody, when they graduate from high school or college, they start from the same point. It's not even that. It's equality of the end result. So the standard of justice is fairness. But we're all different. We're all unequal in intelligence and our ambitions and our work ethics and our values, and we get different results. So the only way to implement the justice of fairness is to redistribute wealth. It's to cut the tops off of everything. But he doesn't just stop at wealth. It's also the redistribution of values. So that's kind of the principle of egalitarianism. So some examples are, it's not better health care, but it's equal health care. So in an ABC interview, President Obama stated that even if it were proven that lowering taxes would improve the economy, he may still raise taxes because it was the fair thing to do. Fairness is driving it. So this fairness of values and equality of values, it's what Eric Holder was pushing about trying terrorists in American courts and give them full protection of American law. It's equality of values, that terrorists have the same values as an American citizen in a court of law. So that's where they started, and they had to back away from that. It's this view that all countries are equal. Therefore, we need to apologize for America's exceptionalism and America's greatness. So that was was it 2008? Went to, especially into the Middle East, and apologized for America. It's also the view, and this is evolving in the last week, it's the view that Islam's values are equally valid as American values. That is the evil of egalitarianism. That is the philosophy that's driving our president. And we've never seen that in another president. For egalitarianism, the goal is not individual happiness, but it's fairness, even if we have to have a lower standard of living. So his comment, you didn't build that, you can be damn sure it was a mistake. It was not a mistake. It's the essence of what egalitarianism is. So I think he really did mean it, even though the press was backing, well, he really didn't. He thought he was referring to infrastructure and bridges. So the tactics of egalitarianism, so you see this all over the place. So first off, you single out disadvantaged groups, like Latinos, like blacks, like women. And you pit one group versus the other. In class warfare, you pit the rich versus the poor. You have to have two different classes. If you're gonna make an argument for equality, you have to create two unequal groups. It's how the agenda is advanced. So that's the philosophy that is driving him. That book, The Theory of Justice, the timing and coming out of Harvard, it was when he was educated. I mean, that was the theory that was coming out at that time. So the only thing that's standing in the way of Obama advancing his egalitarian agenda is our founding fathers, our Constitution, and his re-election. And that's why this election is so critical to the survival of America. So when I watched the Democratic National Convention, the Republican National Convention, to me the nugget that gave me optimism was the speech by Mia Love, who's the mayor of Saratoga Springs in Utah. And in her speech, she expressed to me what the proper view of equality is. She said, "We have an equal opportunity to be as unequal as you choose." We have an equal opportunity to be as unequal as you choose. What she meant is that in America, you can be as rich or as poor as you choose to be. You can be as productive or unproductive as you choose to be. You can be as happy as you choose to be. And all you have to do is work for it. That's all you have to do. Those are the values of our founding fathers and the spirit of America. So let me just try to concretize this about, okay, what can we do about this? And to me, it's not only asserting the positive and making arguments for a proper, system of philosophy and economics and politics and arguing for the morality of capitalism, but it's also calling politicians out on the evil of what's happening. Every time you hear a politician say, "We're going to create jobs," I would challenge the premises exactly of what's behind that, because they can't. When they say we can grow the economy, so there's things that they can do both in jobs and economy to stop destroying jobs and economic growth, which will appear as they've done something and grown the economy, but it's just stop the destruction of those two things. You also hear, all we need is compromise. We just, why can't the Republicans compromise with the Democrats? And that's kind of this evil set about putting, one group against the other is, well, now let's compromise and we'll come to some happy medium. It's whenever you see two groups set up like that, and, XYZ, and everybody's got to pay their fair share. If you ever hear that word fair share, that's code word for some kind of scam coming, then shakedown coming. And all we need is just another government program and just a little bit more spending to fix whatever problem. So the only solution to increasing wealth and full employment is economic freedom and laissez-faire capitalism. So the key is the battle is not really political. The battle is really not economics. And of course, it's about both of those things. But the root is really about a proper philosophy. It's the evil of this philosophy of egalitarianism. And it's to ground the viewpoint and the vision of our founding fathers and our Constitution and Declaration of Independence in a proper philosophy. And what I firmly believe is that Ayn Rand did that. And that she has grounded in a way that America can be defended on a philosophic basis.